It was raining that day. Not the kind of soft drizzle that makes you want to curl up with coffee, but the type of rain that soaks your shoes before you reach the front door. I remember because I stepped into the hotel lobby already half wet, dragging my suitcase behind me, tired and annoyed after a delayed flight, and too many voicemails from people I didn't want to hear from. I wasn't there for vacation. This trip was more like an escape. The front desk was nearly empty. Just a young guy behind the counter, typing something on the screen. I noticed him right away, not because he was attractive in the way people usually mean it, but because of how invisible he looked. Skinny, quiet, head down. He didn't even look up when I approached. "Hi," I said, dropping my bag and brushing water off my jacket. Reservation under Blake Carter. His fingers froze on the keyboard, like he wasn't expecting anyone to talk to him directly. Then slowly his eyes flicked up, and that's when I saw them. Those eyes, dark and unsure, with a tiredness behind them that didn't belong to someone so young. I guessed he couldn't be older than 19. "Oh, yeah, just a second," he mumbled, looking back at the screen. His voice cracked slightly. Nervous. Maybe shy. Maybe both. There was a long pause as he clicked through the computer. He didn't rush, and I didn't pressure him. I just watched him. He had sharp cheekbones and messy dark hair that kept falling in his eyes. His name tag said Ezra. That name stayed with me for some reason. He finally handed me a key card without much eye contact. Room 412. Elevators to the left. "Thanks, Ezra," I said, saying his name on purpose. He blinked, just for a second, like he wasn't used to people calling him that. I turned and headed for the elevator, but something about that small interaction stuck with me. Not in a romantic way, at least not yet, but more like I recognized something in him. Loneliness, maybe. Or maybe I was just projecting. The room was fine. Quiet. Clean. A little too cold. I stood by the window watching the rain hit the parking lot, thinking about how strange life had become. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was supposed to be back home, trying to fix things with someone who didn't want to be fixed with anymore. But instead, I'd booked a last-minute hotel in a small town 2 hours away from anywhere meaningful. Maybe I was hoping to disappear for a few days. Or maybe I just wanted to feel like someone new in a place that didn't know me. That night, I went down to the vending machines to grab a bottle of water. The hallway was quiet except for the distant hum of ice machines and a flickering fluorescent light above. And there he was again, Ezra, sitting behind the desk, earbuds and doodling in a notebook. The lobby was empty except for him, and some classical music playing softly overhead. I walked slowly, not wanting to startle him. Working hard or hardly working? I joked gently. He looked up, surprised again, pulled one earbud out. "Oh, hey, hi." I held up the bottle of water, like it was some kind of peace offering. "Didn't expect to run into you again." He gave a small laugh. "Well, I live here, basically. Night shifts almost every day. That can't be fun." He shrugged. "It's quiet. That's the part one like." There was a pause, and then he seemed to get brave enough to ask, "You in town for something important?" "Not really," I admitted. "Just taking a break." He nodded slowly, like he understood what that meant without needing the full story. "Me too," he said quietly, almost himself. And just like that, I sat down on the couch in the lobby, not to flirt, not to pry, just to be around someone who felt like he was also a little lost. We didn't talk much that night, just a few lines here and there. But when I went back up to my room, I kept thinking about the way he spoke, like he was holding something in, like the world had passed him by so many times. He didn't bother reaching for it anymore. Over the next few days, I saw him more, always at night, always alone. He started greeting me first, still softly, but with something behind it, like maybe he was starting to trust me. I'd sit in the lobby and drink bad coffee just for an excuse to be around him. I didn't even know why. There was something haunting about the boy, something familiar. I started learning little things. He liked to draw, mostly fantasy stuff. He hated loud guests. He drank his coffee black, even though he clearly didn't enjoy the taste. He once told me, "It's better than sleeping," which made me wonder what his dreams were like. One night, I asked if he always worked alone this late. He looked at me and said, "Yeah, no one notices me anyway." That hit harder than I expected. I looked at him for a long second and said gently, "I notice you." He turned red, actually red, like no one had ever said that to him before. He looked away fast, pretending to focus on the computer. But something changed in the air between us that night. I didn't know what it was yet, but something was building. Not just attraction, not just sympathy. It was something deeper, like two people recognizing the invisible pieces in each other, something no one else had bothered to see. And honestly, that was just the beginning. If you've ever met someone who changed your whole understanding of what connection feels like, stick around. This story is just getting started. Leave a comment if you've ever felt invisible like Ezra did. Drop a like if you've ever made someone feel seen. And hey, if this story speaks to you even a little, subscribe. There's so much more to come, and I'd really love for you to be here when it does. I woke up the next morning to the sound of rain still hitting the window, the kind of steady, persistent rain that makes everything feel like it's moving in slow motion. I didn't have anywhere to be, nothing to rush to, but there was a strange feeling in the air, something I couldn't shake, even after a hot shower and a cup of weak hotel coffee. It wasn't like me to be stuck in my own head for too long, but Ezra had done something to me, something that made me wonder if I was just imagining all this, or if it was real. I'd never really believed in the idea of meeting someone who could change your life. But there I was, thinking about him again. I hadn't expected to see him until later that night. But as I walked down the hall to grab some breakfast, there he was. Ezra was sitting at the front desk, his head down, as usual, absorbed in his phone. He didn't notice me at first, so I took a moment to watch him. His usual nervous energy was gone. Today he seemed calm. He was wearing a black hoodie with the sleeves pulled up, and I noticed how his wrists looked. Thin, but strong, like they'd never been allowed to be anything else. I couldn't help but think about his soft features, the quiet way he existed in the world, as though he wasn't supposed to stand out. For a second, I felt a wave of guilt. Why did I care so much about someone I barely knew? I pushed it aside, forcing myself to walk toward him. "Morning," I said, trying to keep things casual. Ezra looked up, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The kind of look that felt more like an accident. But then his gaze softened, and he gave a small, shy smile. "Hey, morning," he replied. He was more awake now, more present. I liked it, but it also made my chest tighten. "You're up early." He shrugged. "Guess I'm just used to it. I usually start around 7. 7? At the front desk." He nodded. "Yeah, sometimes even earlier. Depends on the day." There was a pause before he added, "But it's okay. I don't mind." I didn't know why, but the way he said it made me want to reach out and ask him if he really meant that, if he truly didn't mind, or if that was just a mask he wore to get through it. But I didn't want to push him. Not yet. "So, what do you do when you're not working here?" I asked, more curious than I thought I'd be. Ezra blinked, clearly caught off guard. "I draw," he said slowly, almost like he wasn't sure if he should say it. "Draw." I repeated, intrigued. "Like what?" He hesitated, biting his lip. "Mostly just fantasy stuff. Dragons, magic, all that kind of thing." "Cool," I said, surprised by how it made me feel. "You have a sketchbook or something?" "Yeah, in my bag," he muttered, looking down at the counter. "But I'm not great or anything. Just do it for fun." "I'm sure you're better than you think," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He smiled a little, but then looked away, like he was embarrassed by the praise. "I'm not looking to get famous or anything. It's just a way to pass the time." A silence fell between us. It wasn't awkward, but it was full of things unspoken, things I wanted to ask, things I didn't have the courage to. "I'm sure you're good at it," I said again, wanting to push past the hesitation. "Have you ever thought about showing anyone? I mean, there's got to be people who would appreciate it." Ezra shrugged. "Nah, people don't care about stuff like that. Ezra shook his head. "Nah, people don't care about stuff like that. He paused before adding, "And honestly, I don't think they should." That hit me harder than I expected. His words felt like a window into something deeper, like he was speaking about more than just his art. It felt like he was telling me that he didn't believe anyone could care about him either, that somehow he didn't deserve to be noticed. But I wasn't going to let him think that. Not on my watch. The next few days felt different. Every time I saw Ezra, I felt more drawn to him. The casual conversations started to feel like something more, like they weren't just about passing time, but about something we were both craving, connection. And every time our eyes met, there was something unspoken between us, something I couldn't quite define. But one thing was certain. I couldn't ignore the way he made me feel. And it wasn't just sympathy or curiosity. It was like I was finally seeing him, really seeing him, for the first time. One night, when I returned to the hotel late, Ezra was still behind the desk. But this time, there was a different energy around him. A kind of stillness, like he was waiting for something, or someone. I approached the desk, not wanting to disturb him, but unable to ignore the pull I felt. He looked up as I approached, his face lighting up a little when he saw me. "Blake, you're back." I smiled, leaning against the counter. "Yeah, guess I couldn't stay away." "Did you get everything sorted out?" he asked, his voice a little softer now. "Sort of. I'm still figuring it out, honestly." "Sounds like you're carrying a lot," he said quietly, and for a moment, there was something in his eyes, a depth I hadn't seen before. I stared at him, unsure how to respond. The air between us was thicker now. The tension was undeniable. "What about you?" I asked, breaking the silence. "What's your story?" He glanced down, almost hesitant to speak. "My story? I don't know. Not much to tell." There was a brief silence before I said something that surprised even me. "I think you're selling yourself short, Ezra." He looked up then, meeting my eyes directly. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Something that wasn't just about being invisible. It was real, vulnerable. And maybe, just maybe, it was about him seeing me back. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let this story fade. Not now. Not with him. We both needed more than what we were giving each other on the surface. And as crazy as it might sound, I couldn't help but wonder. Was I the one who'd finally see him? Maybe. I was about to find out. Have you ever met someone who changed how you see the world? Like if you've ever shared a connection you never expected. If you're curious where this story goes, subscribe. More is coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Maybe it was the soft hum of the hotel's air conditioner, or the fact that I was on my third cup of bad coffee since 10 p.m. But the truth was simpler than that. I couldn't stop thinking about Ezra. Something had shifted between us. It wasn't obvious, not loud or clear, but it was there, like a whisper echoing between everything we said and everything we didn't. That moment earlier at the desk, when he looked me in the eye, stayed with me. It was like he was silently asking, "Can I trust you?" And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to earn that trust. It was close to midnight when I wandered back downstairs. I told myself it was just to stretch my legs, maybe grab a soda, but I knew the real reason. I wanted to see him. The lobby was quiet, dimly lit, just as it always was at this hour. Ezra was behind the desk, head bent over a sketchbook, his pencil moving quickly across the page. I stood there for a moment, watching him. He looked peaceful in a way I hadn't seen before. His hoodie sleeves were pushed up again, revealing ink-stained fingers and a small scar near his left wrist. When I cleared my throat softly, he looked up, and his face lit up the way someone does when they're not used to being seen but are happy when they are. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, closing the sketchbook fast, almost like he was embarrassed to be caught in the act. I smiled, guilty. Figured I'd come down and see what the night owl was up to. Ezra laughed under his breath. "Just drawing. Keeps me sane." "Mind if I see?" I nodded toward the sketchbook. His fingers tensed slightly over it. "It's not really finished." "That's okay. Neither am I," I said, trying to keep it light. He looked at me for a moment, searching my face for something, maybe judgment, maybe approval. Then, with a small exhale, he turned the sketchbook around. And what I saw genuinely stunned me. It wasn't just good. It was alive. He'd drawn a boy sitting on the edge of a rooftop, staring out at the night sky. There were tiny stars dotting the sky, and shadows curling around the boy's figure, like he belonged more to night than the world below. "That's beautiful," I said quietly. Ezra looked down. "It's just a sketch." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "It's more than that." He didn't say anything for a moment, then muttered, "He doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere. So he goes up high, where no one can see him." My chest tightened. "You draw yourself?" I asked gently. Ezra gave a small, almost invisible nod. "Sometimes it's the only place I exist." I sat down in the nearest lobby chair, suddenly unsure of what to say. The way he said that, it didn't sound like drama. It sounded like truth. Like he had felt invisible for so long, he forgot what it meant to be seen. And now I understood why our small talks felt like something bigger. He wasn't used to anyone staying long enough to really look. We sat in silence for a while, the quiet buzzing of the vending machines filling the space. I didn't want to break it. I just wanted to be near him. Then Ezra spoke softly. "You're different, you know that?" "Different how?" "Most people come through here and never even look up. You notice things." I leaned forward slightly. "I notice you, Ezra." His eyes flickered, nervous, unsure, but not retreating. "Why?" It was a good question. One I hadn't answered, even for myself. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe because I felt like the boy on the rooftop, too." That's when I saw it. Something shift in him. Not a smile, not relief, but something more fragile. Like a wall lowering just enough for air to get through. He didn't say anything, but his hand moved slightly toward mine on the desk. It didn't touch, just hovered, like he wanted to reach out, but wasn't sure if it was allowed. And I didn't move. I didn't want to scare him off. It was almost 1 a.m. when he finally stood up and said, "You want to see something weird?" I raised a brow. "Sure." He pulled a key from under the desk and motioned toward the hallway. "There's a maintenance stairwell that goes up to the roof. It's locked, but..." He trailed off, eyes twinkling with something between fear and excitement. "You take everyone up there?" I teased. He gave a small smirk. "Only the ones who notice me." The rooftop was cold and smelled like metal and rain, but the view was something else. The city stretched out below us, quiet, still, like the world had paused just for us. Ezra stood near the edge, arms folded against the wind. "I come up here when I can't breathe," he said. I walked up beside him. "And does it help?" "Sometimes." He looked at me then, his face half lit by the city lights, and I saw it again, that mix of vulnerability and strength that made him so hard to ignore. "You know," he said softly, "you talk to me like I matter." "You do," I said without hesitation. For a moment, neither of us moved. The wind picked up, brushing his hair back from his face. He looked younger up here, freer, but also like he'd seen too much for someone his age. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down on the rooftop ledge and tapped the spot next to him. I joined him, careful not to sit too close. He didn't speak. Neither did I. We just sat there, legs dangling off the side, our shoulders almost touching. And for the first time since I met him, Ezra let the silence mean something. He wasn't hiding behind it. He was sharing it. I glanced sideways and caught him looking at me. Not shy this time. Not scared, but searching. Like he wanted to say something, but was testing whether he could trust me with it. And even though he never said the words, I heard them. "Don't leave." That night, we didn't kiss. There was no dramatic confession. Just two people sitting on the edge of the world, trying to figure out why they were drawn to each other and what that meant. But it was real, and it mattered. Because for someone like Ezra, even one night of being seen could be everything. Have you ever had a moment that changed your heart quietly, without warning? If you've ever made someone feel less alone, drop a like. And if you're still here with me and Ezra, subscribe. This story's not done. Not even close. It had been a few nights since Ezra took me up to the roof. Since then, something between us had changed. We still hadn't crossed any lines. There were no kisses, no late-night texts or whispered promises. But we didn't need those things to know we were standing on the edge of something deeper. He saw me now, and I saw him, but I could also feel something building behind his eyes. A story he hadn't told, a truth he hadn't let slip. And that silence, it was starting to feel louder every day. I started spending more time in the hotel lobby, pretending I needed coffee or pretending I couldn't sleep. Ezra always noticed. He never said I was being obvious, but he knew. One night, I came down later than usual. I'd been pacing in my room, trying to make sense of what I was even doing. This wasn't like me. I didn't chase people. I didn't linger. But Ezra, he made me want to stay. When I stepped into the lobby, he was waiting, not working, not drawing, just waiting. His eyes lifted as I entered, and instead of giving me the usual smirk or nod, he just said, "Come sit." I didn't question it. I crossed the lobby and dropped into the worn couch beside the check-in counter. He didn't speak for a while. He just sat, staring forward, picking at the edge of his hoodie sleeve. And I knew this was it. Something was coming. I was 16 when I left home, Ezra said quietly. His voice barely rose above the hum of the vending machine. I didn't have a plan. Just knew I couldn't stay. I stayed still, not wanting to disrupt whatever courage it had taken him to say that. My mom caught me looking at a guy's photo on Instagram. That's all it took. I felt a weight drop into my chest. She didn't say anything at first, just gave me this look, like I was something disgusting. I knew from that moment. I couldn't unsee it in her face. He took a breath. The next morning, she told me she was praying for me, that I was possessed, that it wasn't too late to fix myself. Ezra laughed bitterly, but I knew better. I'd already heard how they talked about people like me in church, in the house, even in line at the grocery store, and it was never kind. A long silence followed. I could tell this wasn't a story he shared often. Maybe not ever. "Where did you go?" I asked softly. He glanced over at me. Couch to couch, shelter to shelter. Eventually I landed here. The hotel let me work night shifts under the table until I turned 18. Now I'm on payroll. No benefits. No future. But I have a room, and I get to draw. So, he shrugged like that was supposed to be enough. But I knew better. "You're surviving," I said gently. Ezra looked at me like he was surprised I didn't flinch from his truth. "Yeah," he said. "Barely. But yeah." I didn't know what to say. What could I? His story wasn't just hard. It was the kind that stayed under your skin, quiet and aching. And suddenly, I understood why he looked so tired all the time, why he flinched when kindness got too close. He'd been surviving for too long, and no one had stopped long enough to care. "Does anyone know?" I asked. "About me," he asked, his voice almost sarcastic. "No. I mean, maybe some guess, but no one really wants to know." "Well, I do," I said. "I'm here, aren't I?" Ezra blinked, like my words didn't register at first. Then he leaned back and said something I won't ever forget. "You're the only person in years who's looked at me like I was more than just something to pity or fix." That hit me harder than I expected. "You're not broken, Ezra." He gave me a tired smile. "I know that, but sometimes it helps to hear it." It was 3 a.m. when I finally stood up, the weight of our conversation pressing into every step. Ezra didn't move from the couch. He just sat there, staring at the dark windows, as if waiting for the sun to rise and prove he'd made it through another night. I turned to him before walking away. "If you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. No judgment, no rush." His head tilted slightly. "You already make it feel easier." I smiled, then paused. "You want to come upstairs? Just to hang out, watch something dumb. You don't have to be alone tonight." He hesitated, not because he didn't want to, but because it was probably the first time someone had asked. After a few seconds, he nodded. "Okay." My room felt warmer with him in it, not because of heat, but because of presence. We didn't lie on the bed together. We didn't cuddle or cross any lines. He sat in the chair, legs tucked up, hoodie sleeves stretched over his hands like armor. We watched old cartoons on mute and talked about nothing for hours. He told me about the characters he drew, The fantasy worlds he made up when real life got too loud. I told him about my past relationships, the ones that left me cold, the ones that taught me the difference between being wanted and being understood. And in that strange, quiet middle-of-the-night space, something real happened. Trust. Not fast, not loud, but undeniable. It was almost 5 a.m. when I realized Ezra had fallen asleep in the chair. His head leaned back, mouth slightly open, hair falling across his forehead. He looked young, softer. I grabbed a spare blanket from the closet and draped it over him carefully. Then I sat back and just watched him for a while. And I thought to myself, what if I'm the first person he's ever felt safe around? What if I can give him more than just a place to sleep? Because this wasn't just kindness anymore. It was care. And something about Ezra made me want to be someone better. Someone who stays. Have you ever held space for someone and realized they needed it more than they could say? If this part touched something inside you, leave a like so we know you're still here. Want to see what happens next between Ezra and me? Subscribe, because this is just getting started. The first time Ezra fell asleep in my room, I didn't touch him. I didn't want to. Not because I didn't feel something. I did. Stronger than I'd like to admit. But that night wasn't about that. It was about him trusting me enough to close his eyes. In my space. With me beside him. That kind of trust, it was sacred. I couldn't sleep either. I sat in the dark for hours, just listening to the soft rhythm of his breath, watching the way his face relaxed, how his body finally let go, like he was safe. It did something to me, woke something up. Not desire, exactly. Not lust. Something deeper, quieter, something like need. When the sun started to rise, casting a soft gray light across the room, Ezra stirred. He blinked a few times, then sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes like a child waking from a nap. His voice was low, groggy. Did I snore? I smiled. Like a bear. He rolled his eyes and let out a half-laugh, then looked at me seriously. Thanks for not waking me. I haven't slept like that in a long time. You don't have to thank me, I said softly. I'm glad you felt okay enough to just be here. He nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around his chest. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, You're the only person I've ever fallen asleep around without being scared I'd wake up alone. Later that morning, he went back to his shift. But something was different. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. But the next night, he came to my room again. This time earlier. This time with snacks. We watched old movies. I let him choose, and he picked something animated, sweet, innocent, a comfort film. Something from childhood, he said he barely remembered. He curled up on the bed beside me, not touching but close. The kind of close that made your skin ache even when nothing physical happened. Halfway through the movie, he turned to me and asked, Why do you care? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Why me? He asked. I'm nothing special. I'm just some scared kid with no family, no money, no real future. You could have just passed through. You still can. I looked at him and said, Maybe that's exactly why. He frowned. You feel bad for me? No, I said quickly. I care because you're real, because you don't fake anything, and because when you talk, even when you're scared or angry or sad, you still mean it. There's no pretending with you. He swallowed hard, and for a second I thought he might cry, but he didn't. He just stared at me. Then he said something so quiet, I almost missed it. I want to be touched, but not for the reasons other people want to touch me. That hit me like a wave. I sat up a little straighter, heart thudding. What do you mean? I asked. Ezra looked away. I've been used before. Guys twice my age. Some who offered food, a place to crash. Some who said they loved me. But it was always about their need, not mine. A long pause. Then he added, But with you, I don't feel like a thing. I feel like a person. I moved closer, not to reach for him, but just so he knew I was here, fully. You are a person, I said. You're Ezra. You're more than your past. He looked at me again. This time, really looked. And that's when it changed. That's when his eyes softened. He leaned in, slow, cautious. like he was asking a question without speaking. Our lips didn't touch. Not yet. They just hovered close enough that I could feel his breath against mine. And I waited, not because I didn't want it, but because I needed him to be sure. Ezra hesitated. Then, slowly, he pulled back, eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be," I said gently. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." He looked like he didn't know what to say. So instead, he crawled closer, rested his head on my shoulder, and let out a shaky breath. And we stayed like that for a long, long time. The days that followed were quiet, slow, fragile. Ezra and I slipped into this strange rhythm of soft glances and shared silences. We didn't label it, didn't explain it, but there was comfort in it, safety. One night, I noticed a bruise on the inside of his arm, just under the sleeve of his hoodie. It was faint, but it was there. He saw me looking and froze. "Don't ask," he said. "I'm not judging." I told him. "Just if someone hurt you." "No one hurt me this time," he said quickly. "It's old. I'm just clumsy." But the way he said it, it didn't sit right. I wanted to press, but I didn't. Not yet. I knew Ezra only opened his heart when he felt safe. If I pushed now, he might shut me out again. So instead, I did something different. I reached for his hand, not forcefully, just offered mine, palm up between us, and slowly, carefully, he placed his hand in mine. That simple touch said more than any words could. He wasn't ready to tell me everything, but he was ready for this. Later that night, he asked if he could stay over again. I nodded. Of course. He climbed under the blanket, fully clothed, hoodie still on. I turned off the lights. We lay there, inches apart, breathing quietly in the dark. Then, softly, he whispered, "Sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to feel wanted just because I exist." "You don't have to wonder," I said. "Not here. Not with me." And slowly, ever so slowly, he reached across the gap between us. Our fingers laced together in the dark. No kissing. No more words. Just the soft sound of two broken people finding peace in each other's presence. Ezra was like a puzzle with pieces missing. Some he'd lost, some he never had. But I didn't want to fix him. I just wanted to be the person who saw the beauty in what remained. And in that quiet, dim hotel room, with the city sleeping beyond the window, I realized something. I wasn't passing through anymore. I was staying. Because sometimes we don't choose the people we fall for. Sometimes they find us, even in the most unexpected places. Even behind the front desk of a quiet, lonely hotel. Ezra had spent the last 3 nights in my room. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Sometimes he fell asleep before the movie finished. Sometimes we stayed up talking until the sun threatened to rise. But every time he came in, I felt the air in the room shift, soften, like he brought with him some kind of peace I didn't know I needed. And still, I hadn't touched him. Not fully. Not the way I sometimes wanted to, late at night, when I caught the way his fingers flexed in sleep or how his lips parted when he dreamed. But I kept a line between us, because I was waiting, not for permission, for trust. That evening, Ezra came to my door without knocking. He had that look again, the one that told me he'd been quiet all day, locked in his head, maybe drawing, maybe not eating, maybe just trying to hold himself together. He stepped in, hoodie tied around his shoulders, eyes flicking toward me without a word. I didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, I opened my arms. He walked into them. No questions, no hesitation. His body folded against mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I held him, not like a lover, not like a friend. Something in between, something deeper, something called understanding. We sat on the bed, legs crossed, a half-eaten bag of chips between us. Ezra was picking at the edge of the bag, staring at nothing. "I had a dream about you last night," he said suddenly. I turned toward him. "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "You were leaving, like walking down the hotel hallway. And no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't catch you. I didn't know what to say." He added, "When I woke up, I couldn't breathe. Took me 10 minutes to realize it wasn't real." A pause. Then he looked straight at me. I don't want you to leave. And right then, I realized something I hadn't fully faced until now. He wasn't the only one afraid of losing someone. I leaned back against the wall and said quietly, "You're not the only one with ghosts, Ezra." He blinked, surprised. Yeah. He waited. I took a breath. When I was 19, I fell for a guy. Hard. He was older, confident, the kind of guy who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Ezra listened closely. I told him everything about me. My fears, my dreams, even the stuff I'd never told my parents. And for a while, I thought he loved me. Ezra leaned in a little, like he could feel where this was going. But it turned out I was just someone he used when his marriage got boring. I was the secret, the experiment, the escape. When his wife found out, he cut me off like I was nothing. And the worst part? I still miss him for months. Ezra's eyes softened. You loved him. I nodded. I thought I did. But mostly, I loved how I felt when I was with him. Like I mattered. Like I was visible. I looked at Ezra. You make me feel like that again. The silence between us after that wasn't awkward. It was full, like we were both letting the truth settle. Ezra moved closer, his knee brushing mine. I've never been in love, he said. Not real love. I don't even know what it's supposed to feel like. I nodded. Neither did I. Not really. Is this it? He asked softly. My heart skipped. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But it feels like something worth finding out. He exhaled shakily. Then carefully he reached out and touched my face, just the side of my cheek, his fingers light, like I might disappear if he held on too tight. Then let's find out, he whispered. That night, he didn't sleep in the chair or curl up on the far side of the bed. He lay beside me, face to face. Nothing between us but the tension of two hearts slowly opening. He placed his hand over my chest and whispered, "You always feel calm." I smiled. That's because I'm trying not to freak out. Ezra laughed, really laughed, soft and sudden, and it made me fall for him even harder. Not because of how he looked, but because of how he let me see him, all of him, without shame. We didn't sleep much. Not because we were doing anything. Just we couldn't stop talking. He told me about the first time he realized he liked boys, how it felt like a secret even from himself. I told him about the first time I lied to protect someone else's lie. We shared the tiny details most people don't care about. His favorite childhood cartoon, my weird obsession with mint tea, the sound of rain on metal rooftops. And somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., our hands found each other again under the covers. This time, he didn't let go. By sunrise, Ezra was half asleep, his head resting on my chest. I ran my fingers through his hair gently, hoping he wouldn't wake up. He looked so peaceful, like all the noise in his head had finally quieted down. And I realized something. This wasn't temporary anymore. I didn't want it to be. Not with him. Not after all this. Later that morning, he finally got up, hair a mess, hoodie wrinkled. He stood by the window, staring at the early morning traffic, eyes distant. "What's going to happen to us?" he asked suddenly. I sat up. "What do you mean?" "I mean when you leave, when this is over. Do we pretend it never happened?" His voice cracked just enough to shatter something in me. I got out of bed and went to him, placing my hands on his waist gently. "I'm not planning on leaving." "You live 4 states away," he whispered. "So?" I said, "That's a drive, not a goodbye." He turned to face me, his expression somewhere between hope and heartbreak. People promise things all the time. They say they'll call, they'll visit, but they don't. "I'm not people," I said, and then I kissed him. Slow, soft, real. It wasn't hungry or wild. It was steady, like I wanted him to feel it, every second of it. When we pulled back, his eyes were glassy. "I think I've been waiting for that," he murmured. "So have I," I whispered back. He didn't say it, and I didn't either. But we both knew. Something between us had changed for good, and no matter what came next, we weren't going back to being strangers. Not now. Not ever. It was raining the next evening. Not the gentle kind that makes you want to curl up and nap. This was heavier, erratic, angry. The kind that painted the windows with streaks and filled the hotel lobby with a low hum of unease. Ezra had asked for the night off. He didn't say why. He just knocked on my door with a hoodie soaked through and his eyes already brimming with something I couldn't read. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just walked in, took off his hoodie, and sat on the edge of my bed like he didn't know what to do with himself. I didn't push. I sat beside him in silence. Eventually, he spoke. I saw someone downstairs. I turned. Someone you know? He nodded barely. My old foster dad. Those 4 words shifted the entire energy in the room. Ezra's voice was distant, like he was talking about someone else's memory. His name's Cal. He doesn't know I work here. I don't even think he recognized me. What's he doing here? I asked gently. He said he was in town for a conference, but I think he just likes staying in hotels. He used to bring guys back with him. Even when we were kids, he'd lock the door and tell us to stay quiet. I felt a tight, knot twist in my chest. Ezra kept talking. He never touched me. Not like that. But he didn't stop what he knew was happening in the next room. And sometimes that's worse, you know? I didn't speak. Because what could I say? What could I possibly say that didn't feel hollow? So I reached for his hand. And this time he didn't flinch. He let me hold it. Let me anchor him. He used to tell us if we ran away, we'd be sent back to juvie. Or worse. And we believed him. Ezra's breathing had changed. Faster. Shallower. I want to tell him I'm not afraid of him anymore, he whispered. I want to walk right up and say it to his face. I looked at him carefully. Do you want me to be there? Ezra nodded once. Yeah, just be close. Don't let me go back into myself. I squeezed his hand. I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, we waited in the lobby. Ezra wore all black. Not because he was trying to look tough. He wasn't pretending. But because black made him feel invisible and safe. Like armor. Cal came down from the elevator just before 9 a.m. Middle-aged, broad-shouldered, balding, business casual. He didn't even glance at Ezra as he passed, until Ezra stood up and said his name. Cal. The man turned, confused at first, then squinting, and then recognition. The kind that tightens a mouth and shifts the eyes sideways like they're already preparing a lie. Ezra. The way he said it made my blood boil, like he was surprised the kid had survived it all. Ezra didn't flinch. You remember me. Cal gave a nervous laugh. Well, I'll be damned. Look at you, all grown up. You thought I wouldn't make it past 16, Ezra said coldly. That's not true. You told the caseworker I was unstable, that I was a problem. Cal's face darkened. Look, I don't know what you think you remember. Ezra stepped forward. I remember everything. There it was, the steel in his voice, the quiet fire I'd seen building for days. I remember how you looked away, how you told us to keep quiet. I remember the nights you let your friends stay over, and the way the door would slam behind them in the morning. People were starting to glance our way, but Ezra didn't care. Neither did I. You didn't protect me, Ezra said, almost whispering now. You protected yourself. Cal's jaw tightened. I don't have time for this. He turned to walk, but Ezra called out, louder this time, voice shaking. I forgive you. Cal froze. So, did I? I forgive you, Ezra repeated. Not for you. For me. Because I'm done carrying your shame. Cal didn't turn around. He just walked, fast, out the front doors. And when they closed behind him, Ezra let out a breath I didn't know he'd been holding for years. Then he turned to me, and for the first time he smiled. Not the half smile, not the polite one, a real one. We went back to my room. Ezra lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I feel lighter, he said, like I dropped something I didn't know I'd been holding. I lay beside him. You were incredible. He blushed. I thought I'd cry. It would have been okay if you did. I didn't want to cry in front of you. You can, I said softly. Always. He turned his head toward me and just stared. Then he whispered, I'm scared. Of what? That this isn't real. That one day you'll wake up and decide I'm too much. I scooted closer. I've already decided. You're not too much. Not for me. His eyes shimmered, but he didn't cry. Instead, he leaned in, and this time, the kiss wasn't hesitant. It was full, sure, warm, like he'd finally let himself believe it was okay to be wanted without being used. That night, we didn't sleep much again. But this time, it wasn't about stories or fears or the past. It was about the now. Ezra's skin against mine, his fingers tracing soft shapes on my shoulder, the way he whispered my name like it meant safety. We didn't rush anything. We just let it unfold, breath by breath. And by the time the sun rose, tangled in our sheets and laughter, I knew this wasn't a hotel fling. This wasn't temporary. This was real. It had been 2 weeks since Ezra confronted his past. 2 weeks of quiet evenings, soft laughter, shared meals, and movie nights where he finally relaxed enough to fall asleep without his fists clenched. We had created a rhythm. We moved like we belonged to the same silence. And I could feel something inside both of us growing. Something tender, sacred, and terrifying. Until one morning, there was a knock at my door, and Ezra stood there, not with his usual sleepy grin or quiet knock, but with a white envelope in his hand, and eyes full of panic. "I need to show you something," he said before I could even say hi. He walked in fast, dropped the envelope on the bed like it was poison, and stepped back like he couldn't be near it anymore. I picked it up. There was no return address, just his name. Ezra Quinn. I looked up at him. "Who gave this to you?" "One of the cleaning ladies. She said someone left it at the front desk last night with instructions to deliver it this morning. But it's not from the mail." "Did you open it?" He shook his head. "I'm scared." I nodded slowly. Then I peeled it open. Inside was a letter, folded, handwritten, and short. The moment I read the first line, I knew, "Ezra, I've been watching you." I froze. Ezra sat down, his face pale. "What does it say?" I hesitated. "Then read the rest out loud. You don't get to pretend you're someone new. I know who you are. What you are. You think hiding in a hotel and sleeping with older men makes you safe? You're wrong. I'm not done with you yet." That was it. No name. No signature. Just one more wound from a past that wouldn't stay buried. Ezra covered his face with his hands. "It's him. I know it's him. I didn't ask who. He didn't need to say." He started shaking. He used to leave me notes like this. Not just in person, on my sketchbook, in my locker, even tucked into my shoes. I knelt in front of him. "We need to tell someone." "No," his voice was firm. "I can't go to the police. I don't have any proof. They won't believe me. They'll say it's a prank. They always do." "Then we do something," I said, "because I won't let him haunt you again." Ezra looked at me, vulnerable but determined. "Can we leave? Just get out of here for a while?" I nodded. "Yes, as soon as you're ready." We packed in silence. He didn't have much. Just a duffel bag, a sketch pad, and a hoodie I'd washed more times than I could count. I didn't have many answers, but I had a car, a full tank of gas, and a heart that knew exactly what it was protecting. We checked out by noon. I told the front desk manager I had a family emergency. He didn't ask questions. And just like that, we were gone. We drove for hours. Past fields, past cities, until the signs turned Friday, found a small cabin-style motel just outside a place called Willow Creek. A one-story row of rooms with creaky doors and a faint smell of pine. Nothing fancy, but it felt safe. Ezra walked in, dropped his bag, and sank onto bed like he'd been carrying a mountain on his back. OM highway numbers to the names of towns with populations under 1,000. Ezra stared out the window the whole time, quiet, but I could feel his mind racing. I sat beside him, waited, until he finally whispered, "I hate that I still feel like he owns part of me." I turned toward him. "He doesn't. Not anymore." "But he got in again," Ezra said. "He found me. After everything." I reached for his hand. "Then we change the rules. We don't hide. We don't run. We rebuild." He looked at me. How? I smiled gently. Together, that night, Ezra had a nightmare. He didn't scream, but he thrashed. Tears slipped down his cheeks before he even woke up. I pulled him close, held him until his breathing slowed. He mumbled something against my chest. I couldn't hear it clearly, but it sounded like, "Don't let go." I didn't. Not then. Not the next morning. Not the day after that. Over the next week, things slowly softened again. We went for walks through the woods behind the motel. He sketched tree branches and broken fences. I cooked us eggs and toast in a tiny kitchenette. We didn't talk about the letter, but it hung between us like a shadow in the corner of every room, until one afternoon, Ezra asked to visit the nearest art supply store. We drove into town, found a quiet little place run by a woman in her 70s who offered us lemonade and told us the town's entire history, while Ezra browsed. He picked out new pencils, a proper sketch pad, and a black leather-bound journal. He didn't say what it was for, but I didn't ask. Back at the motel, I watched him write, not draw. Write. His hand moved carefully, like each word needed to be weighed. When he finished, he tore the page out, folded it, slipped it into an envelope. He handed it to me. I raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "It's for him." I hesitated. "You sure?" Ezra nodded. "I'm not going to send it. I just needed to write it." "Do you want me to read it?" He paused, then nodded. I opened the envelope. There was only one paragraph. "You didn't break me. You thought fear would own me forever, but it doesn't. I laugh now. I create. I sleep beside someone who sees me, not for what you said I was, but for who I am. You don't get the last word." "I do. And I say this, I am free." I looked up, eyes glassy. Ezra was watching me. "I needed to say it," he whispered, "even if he never hears it." "You said it." I told him, and that's enough. That night, we made love for the first time. Not hurried, not desperate, just present, raw, honest. His fingers trembled when he touched me, but not from fear, from wanting, from finally choosing. Every kiss felt like the end of a chapter and the beginning of something entirely new. And when it was over, he lay beside me, chest to chest, our fingers laced. "I never thought I'd survive long enough to feel this," he said. "You did," I said softly. He smiled. "I did." It had been a peaceful week in Willow Creek. Ezra was starting to smile more, real, unguarded smiles that reached his eyes. We spent our days cooking simple meals, sketching by the lake, and reading on the porch until the stars came out. For the first time, I think he believed the world could be soft. But peace is a strange way of making you forget that danger doesn't always knock. Sometimes it waits. And that day, it found us at a dusty gas station off Highway 19. We'd pulled over for snacks. Nothing special, just a lazy afternoon with nowhere to be. Ezra wandered down the drink aisle while I filled up the tank outside. When I came in, he was standing at the counter, a candy bar in one hand. The man behind the register, mid-40s, beard, wide shoulders, sharp eyes, was staring at him too long, too close. Something in his posture set off an alarm in my gut. He leaned forward and said, "Ezra Quinn, right?" My entire body went cold. Ezra stiffened, didn't respond. The man smiled, slow and unsettling. "Didn't think I'd see you way out here. You used to hang around with Cal, didn't you?" Ezra took a step back. I stepped forward. "Hey," I said calmly, "that your business?" The man blinked at me, amused. "You must be the guy hiding him." "Or protecting him," I corrected, voice steady. Big difference. The man raised his hands like he meant no harm, but he was still smiling. That smile, the kind that wasn't friendly, just cruel. He rang up the candy bar without another word. We left, but I could feel his eyes on us all the way back to the car. Ezra didn't speak until we were halfway back to the motel. He knew my name. I know. And Cal's. He knows Cal. I glanced over. Who was he? Ezra shook his head. "I don't know, but I've seen him before. He used to come over sometimes, when Cal had guests." I didn't ask what kind of guests. I already knew. Ezra's voice cracked. What if Cal sent him? What if he's looking for me? We don't know that. But what if? We don't run this time, I said firmly. We don't hide. Ezra looked at me, unsure, but deep down I saw it. He didn't want to run anymore either. He wanted this to end. Back at the motel, I called the front desk and asked if we could change rooms. Not out of fear, out of caution. We didn't want anyone finding us easily. Ezra sat on the edge of the bed, silent, the candy bar untouched in his hand. I knelt in front of him. You're not going back there, I said. You hear me? You're not going back to being afraid. What if he knows where we are? Then let him come. He's not the same monster you remember. He still feels like one. I reached for his hand. Then let me stand between you and the past. Let me carry it with you. His eyes welled up, but he didn't let the tears fall. Why do you care so much? He whispered. Because I see you, I said. Not the version they made you believe you were. I see you, and I love what I see. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but instead, he kissed me. That night, sleep was impossible. Every sound outside made Ezra twitch. At one point, he sat up suddenly in bed and whispered, I can't breathe. I turned on the light and held him, pressed my forehead against his until our breaths synced. I've never told anyone what he did, he said in the dark. Not everything. Not fully. You don't have to tell me. But I want to. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he told me everything. He told me about the first time he was left alone with Cal's friend, how it started with a compliment, then a touch on the shoulder. Then, Ezra couldn't finish the sentence. His voice broke halfway through, but I held his hand the entire time, and he didn't let go. I thought if I kept it to myself, it would stop hurting, he said. But it never did. It just stayed there, like rot. I brushed his hair back. You don't have to be quiet anymore. Ezra looked at me like he didn't believe it, but wanted to. Do you think I'll ever stop feeling like I'm still that scared kid? Yes, I said, because you already are. The next morning, he called someone. I listened from the porch, pretending not to hear, but I knew what it was. His voice shook at first, then it grew steadier, until finally he said, I want to file a report. His name is Calvin Watts. He was my foster parent, and I'm ready to tell the truth. He gave them everything. Dates, locations, names. And when he hung up, he came outside and sat beside me. You okay? I asked. I will be. We watched the breeze move through the trees. No sirens, no knocking at the door. Just peace. Earned, not borrowed. Later that afternoon, we returned to the gas station. I didn't want to, but Ezra insisted. He walked in, calm and steady. The same man was behind the counter. This time, Ezra stared him down. You have a message to pass along? He asked. The man blinked. What? To Cal. You have something you want to report back. The man's smirk faltered. Ezra leaned in. Tell him the kid who was supposed to disappear is pressing charges. And if he ever tries to find me again, I won't be alone. He turned to me, reached for my hand. And if you or anyone else tries to silence me again, I'll burn the whole lie down. You understand me? The man didn't speak, didn't blink, just nodded once. And we walked out. Ezra's shoulders were higher than I'd ever seen them, and the sky had never looked clearer. That night, we sat on the hood of my car, eating popsicles from a corner store. Ezra leaned against me, still quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet now. Not fear, not silence, just space. Healing. He took a bite of his popsicle and said, I'm not broken, am I? The call came 2 days later. We were eating breakfast on the porch. Ezra wrapped in my hoodie, barefoot and sleepy-eyed, when my phone buzzed. He looked up as I checked the number. Unknown, but something told me to answer. Hello? A pause. Then a man's voice, low and cautious. Is this Blake? Yes. Who's this? My name's Detective Ramirez. Your friend Ezra Quinn listed you as a contact. I'm calling to let you know Calvin Watts has been arrested. Ezra dropped his fork. We sat in silence for a long time after I ended the call. Ezra's face was unreadable. Not shocked, not smiling, just frozen, like a part of him didn't believe it was real. "He's really in custody?" he whispered. "Yes." "For me?" "For everything," I said gently. "There were other reports too. Other kids. You weren't the only one." His eyes welled up, but I was the first one to speak. "You were brave enough to break the silence. That counts." Ezra nodded slowly, then got up and walked to the edge of the porch, hands in his pockets, head tilted back toward the morning sun, and he whispered, "He doesn't get to hide anymore." The next few days moved like waves. Phone calls from lawyers, emails from detectives, and then a request. Ezra was asked to testify. He didn't have to. There were other statements, other evidence. But they told him, "Your voice will make a difference." At first, he said no. But then something shifted in him. He started writing again. Not just sketches, words, long entries, pages and pages. And one morning, he turned to me at breakfast and said, "I want to look him in the eye." "You're sure?" "No," Ezra said with a small smile. "But I'm ready." The courthouse was in the city. Sleek glass walls, metal detectors, cold marble floors that echoed with every footstep. Ezra wore a clean black button-up, hair brushed neatly, eyes steady, even as his hands trembled. I sat beside him in the waiting area, both of us silent, listening to the low hum of murmured voices and buzzing phones. Then the clerk appeared and said, "Mr. Quinn, we're ready." Ezra stood slowly, then looked at me, and in a voice that barely shook, said, "Come with me." I did. The courtroom wasn't what I expected. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, intimate. Cal sat at the defendant's table, wearing a suit and that same smug expression I'd imagined too many times. But something about him looked different now. Smaller, weaker. His skin sagged more. His eyes darted instead of glared. Ezra walked past him without flinching, took the stand. The oath was spoken. And then he began. "My name is Ezra Quinn. I was placed in Calvin Watts foster care home. When I was 14, his voice was steady, clear. I wasn't there long, just under a year. But in that year, I was abused in ways I still carry in my body. In my mind, I was told I was making it up, that no one would believe me. And for a long time, I believed that too. Cal didn't look at him. Ezra didn't care. He kept going. I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet, I could pretend it didn't happen. But silence didn't protect me. It kept me trapped until I met someone who saw me, who made me feel human again. And because of that, I found the courage to speak. He took a breath, not shaky, but full, alive. "I'm not the scared kid you broke. I'm not the shadow you created. I'm Ezra Quinn, and I'm taking my voice back." When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. Ezra stepped down from the stand, walked past Cal again, and this time he looked at him, not with fear, but with fire. And Cal finally looked back, just for a second, and I swear I saw something flicker in those cold eyes. Not regret, not sorrow, but the realization that he had finally lost. Outside, the air felt different. Ezra leaned against me. He didn't cry. He didn't collapse. He just breathed, like for the first time in years. The air actually belonged to him. That night back at the motel, he curled up beside me and whispered, "You think I'll always carry this?" "Yes," I said honestly, "but it won't always weigh the same." He smiled faintly. "I think I want to find a real place to live. Not motels. Not hiding. Just somewhere I can wake up and know I'm home. Anywhere in mind?" He looked up at me. "I was hoping maybe with you." I kissed his forehead. "Ezra," I said softly, "wherever you are is already home for me." The next morning, we packed for good. No more hiding. No more running. Just 2 bags. And a future neither of us ever thought we'd get to dream. As we drove out of Willow Creek, Ezra rested his hand on my leg. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Some stories don't end in fireworks or explosions. Sometimes they end in something quieter, stronger, like freedom, like love, like two people who finally know what it means to be seen. No, I said, smiling. You're becoming. The call came 2 days later. We were eating breakfast on the porch. Ezra wrapped in my hoodie, barefoot and sleepy-eyed, when my phone buzzed. He looked up as I checked the number. Unknown, but something told me to answer. Hello. A pause. Then a man's voice, low and cautious. Is this Blake? Yes. Who's this? My name's Detective Ramirez. Your friend Ezra Quinn listed you as a contact. I'm calling to let you know Calvin Watts has been arrested. Ezra dropped his fork. We sat in silence for a long time after I ended the call. Ezra's face was unreadable. Not shocked, not smiling, just frozen, like a part of him didn't believe it was real. He's really in custody? He whispered. Yes. For me? For everything, I said gently. There were other reports too. Other kids. You weren't the only one. His eyes welled up, but I was the first one to speak. You were brave enough to break the silence. That counts. Ezra nodded slowly, then got up and walked to the edge of the porch, hands in his pockets, head tilted back toward the morning sun, and he whispered, he doesn't get to hide anymore. The next few days moved like waves. Phone calls from lawyers, emails from detectives, and then a request. Ezra was asked to testify. He didn't have to. There were other statements, other evidence. But they told him, your voice will make a difference. At first, he said no, but then something shifted in him. He started writing again, not just sketches, words, long entries, pages and pages. And one morning, he turned to me at breakfast and said, I want to look him in the eye. You're sure? No, Ezra said with a small smile, but I'm ready. The courthouse was in the city. Sleek glass walls, metal detectors, cold marble floors that echoed with every footstep. Ezra wore a clean black button-up, hair brushed neatly, eyes steady, even as his hands trembled. I sat beside him in the waiting area, both of us silent, listening to the low hum of murmured voices and buzzing phones. Then the clerk appeared and said, Mr. Quinn, we're ready. Ezra stood slowly, then looked at me, and in a voice that barely shook, said, come with me? I did. The courtroom wasn't what I expected. It wasn't dramatic. It was small, intimate. Cal sat at the defendant's table, wearing a suit and that same smug expression I'd imagined too many times. But something about him looked different now. Smaller, weaker. His skin sagged more. His eyes darted instead of glared. Ezra walked past him without flinching, took the stand. The oath was spoken. And then he began. My name is Ezra Quinn. I was placed in Calvin Watts foster care home when I was 14. His voice was steady, clear. I wasn't there long, just under a year. But in that year, I was abused in ways I still carry in my body. In my mind, I was told I was making it up, that no one would believe me. And for a long time, I believed that too. Cal didn't look at him. Ezra didn't care. He kept going. I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet, I could pretend it didn't happen. But silence didn't protect me. It kept me trapped until I met someone who saw me, who made me feel human again. And because of that, I found the courage to speak. He took a breath, not shaky, but full, alive. I'm not the scared kid you broke. I'm not the shadow you created. I'm Ezra Quinn, and I'm taking my voice back. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Even the judge looked moved. Ezra stepped down from the stand, walked past Cal again, and this time he looked at him, not with fear, but with fire. And Cal finally looked back, just for a second, and I swear I saw something flicker in those cold eyes. Not regret, not sorrow, but the realization that he had finally lost. Outside, the air felt different. Ezra leaned against me. He didn't cry. He didn't collapse. He just breathed, like for the first time in years. The air actually belonged to him. That night back at the motel, he curled up beside me and whispered, Do you think I'll always carry this? Yes, I said honestly, but it won't always weigh the same. He smiled faintly. I think I want to find a real place to live. Not motels. Not hiding. Just somewhere I can wake up and know I'm home. Anywhere in mind? He looked up at me. I was hoping maybe with you. I kissed his forehead. Ezra, I said softly, wherever you are is already home for me. The next morning, we packed for good. No more hiding. No more running. Just 2 bags. And a future neither of us ever thought we'd get to dream. As we drove out of Willow Creek, Ezra rested his hand on my leg. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Some stories don't end in fireworks or explosions. Sometimes they end in something quieter, stronger, like freedom, like love, like 2 people who finally know what it means to be seen. We moved into a small apartment in a quiet town 3 states away. It wasn't fancy. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor unit, faint scent of old paint and wood polish. But for Ezra, it was the first place that was his. No one watched over him. No one tracked his steps. He could decorate how he wanted, sleep when he wanted, wake up safe every morning with no fear. And every night, he fell asleep in my arms like he belonged there. Because he did. We spent our first month building new routines. Ezra got a library card. He started sketching again, not just in black and white like before, but in soft, hopeful colors. He made friends with the local barista, got excited about little things like throw pillows and secondhand lamps. He even applied for a job, part-time at a bookstore. I can't explain how good it felt to watch him grow into himself. Not survive, but live. He'd touch my hand across the couch and whisper, I never thought I'd get this. Neither did I. But here we were. One afternoon, while unpacking the last of my boxes, I found the old motel receipt, the first one, from the hotel where we met. I showed it to Ezra and he smiled. I still can't believe you came back for me. I looked at him, serious. I never left. Weeks passed, then months. The past began to feel farther away. Until one morning, something arrived in the mail. No return address. Just Ezra's full name in unfamiliar handwriting. He stared at the envelope, didn't open it right away. Just held it like it was ticking. What do you want to do? I asked. He took a breath. I want to know. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, written in a neat, tight script. It was from Cal, Ezra's foster abuser. I watched his hands tighten around the paper. Do you want to read it? I offered. He shook his head. No, I need to. He sat at the kitchen table, silent, while I made tea in the background just to have something to do. When he finally finished reading, he folded the pages slowly, carefully, then slid them across the table. Want to read it? He asked. I nodded. The letter wasn't what I expected. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even defensive. It was hollow, dry, like a man who had finally been stripped bare and didn't know what to do with what was left. Ezra, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I won't ask for it, but I need you to know something. I never saw you for what you were. I only saw you for what I could take. I told myself things that helped me sleep, that you were just a burden, a mouth to feed. But the truth is, you scared me. You had light, even when you were hurting. You had this ability to make people care. And I couldn't stand it because I didn't have it. Prison is what I deserve. I know that now. You'll never get back what I took. But I hope, somehow, you find something better. Cal, I finished reading and looked at Ezra. He didn't look angry, or even satisfied. Just calm. What do you feel? I asked. Nothing, he said. Then, after a pause, and that's what tells me I've healed. We didn't keep the letter. Ezra burned it in the sink that night, watched the flames consume every page until nothing was left but ash and silence. Then he turned to me and whispered, Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you still see me as that broken kid? I stepped closer, held his face in both hands. No, I said softly. I see the man who chose to live. A few days later, Ezra started his job at the bookstore. He came home glowing, told me how he rearranged the poetry section and helped an old woman find her favorite childhood novel. He laughed more that night than I'd ever heard him laugh before. And when he climbed into bed, Curling into my side, he whispered, "Do you think it's okay that I'm happy?" I kissed his shoulder. "It's not just okay," I said. "It's everything." Months turned into a year. We painted the apartment warm colors, hung his sketches on the walls, adopted a cat, named him Chai because Ezra was always drinking tea. We found our rhythm, like music only we could hear. One day, Ezra surprised me with a small keychain. It was shaped like the old motel key. "I wanted to remember where it started," he said. "Where we started." I looked at him, heart full. "You saved me too, you know." He smiled. "Yeah, but I think we saved each other." Sometimes we still talk about the past, not to relive it, but to remind ourselves how far we come. Ezra once said something I'll never forget. "They tried to write me out of my own story, but you helped me steal the pen back." He wasn't skinny and scared anymore. He was strong, present, full of color. He still had quiet days where shadows tried to creep in. But now, he had a light that never let them stay. And he had someone who would never let him face them alone. The boy I met in the hotel lobby, he's gone. In his place stands a man who learned to speak, to love, and to reclaim everything he was told he could never have. And I'm proud of him every single day. Not just for surviving, but for choosing joy, for waking up and still choosing me. So when people ask me how we met, I smile and I say, at a hotel, I met a skinny teenage boy who didn't know he deserved to be seen. And now, I never take my eyes off him.